President Donald Trump is now going on the record about his extraordinary plane swap last month that was prompted by a credible Iranian assassination threat. Take a listen to this.
Can you tell us about your ride on the airport catering truck in Turkey? Why did you need to do that?
Well, it's only up to Secret Service. I just follow what they'd like to do. So I go by Secret Service and the military. They wanted me to go on a different flight, a different plane, equal safety, but they wanted me to do it, so I do it. I do what they say.
Why was it too dangerous for you to fly on Air Force One, but not too dangerous for the
I think actually the plane that I flew on was at greater risk. I think it was at greater risk because that would be the plane I think that they would be more likely to go for.
You know, of course, if that's true, it would undercut the entire reason to make the switch. In case you missed it, here's what happened when Trump left the NATO summit in Turkey. In full view of cameras, Trump boarded the old Air Force One. But we now know that he got off that plane and was secretly taken to a military aircraft on an airport catering truck. Here you can see the catering truck parked next to Air Force One. At the same time, you could see both members of the media and White House staff boarding Air Force One. Moments later, the catering truck pulls away from the plane. We now know that Trump was concealed inside that truck. After the plane landed in the UK, we saw the president come down the stairs from Air Force One. It's still not clear how he got on there from the smaller plane. Joining me now to break down all of this, Mark Polymeropoulos, MS Now national security and intelligence analyst. He's also a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Laura and Luke are still with us too. Mark, so two officials tell the New York Times that U.S. intelligence picked up on a specific threat of a surface-to-air missile against Air Force One. Does that explain why they made the swap?
Yeah, Antonio, that's pretty dramatic. I mean, that report kind of came out recently because we were always wondering what was the exact threat of itself. You know, we know the Iranians are certainly capable. It's a very kind of robust terrorist apparatus. Turkey is an arena. They share, of course, a land border with Iran. Iranian intelligence is very active there. So this makes a little more sense because of what the Secret Service, kind of the drastic measures. And first of all, kudos to the Secret Service on this. I mean, I don't think anyone is criticizing them whatsoever. They have a zero-fail mission. They had to take measures, assuming that they learned of this threat almost in real time. And so that's really not the issue here. I think it kind of goes forward to kind of the legal issues, what we call duty to warn. That, in fact, people on the plane, whether it's staff or members of the press corps, were not aware of this threat. But pretty dramatic, and we're going to get some more reporting on the threat itself. If the Iranians have that capability, have that personnel, cells on the ground in Turkey, that's something that I think also flies in the face of kind of the administration's views on how much the Iranians have been damaged. And this threat, assuming, would be ongoing in other countries as well.
Well, to your point about the question of what this means for other personnel, you know, the reporting suggests that some of Trump's closest aides made that transfer with him, but he left behind others like Secretary of State Marco Rubio. What do you make of that?
Right. So the intelligence community, and it started back in 2015. It's a directive. It's called ICD 191. And that's if we obtain information about a credible threat, that there is a duty to warn those individuals. Now, there are waivers involved in this, and presumably there was the waiver that was issued perhaps by the CIA director, perhaps in consult with the Secret Service protective detail, based on protecting sources and methods. But in this case, it looks like that Air Force One, the original Air Force One, was at some risk, and the Secretary of State assumingly knew this. But the press corps and other members of the staff did not. And so I think the American people deserve to know how this decision-making process evolved. And first of all, or just to kind of bookend President Trump's remarks there about the alternate aircraft being at greater risk, I have no idea what he's talking about. That actually flies in the face of all of this. But I think that's just kind of the usual verbal kind of word salad we hear. That makes no sense whatsoever. He actually was safer flying on that alternate aircraft.
Luke, Your colleagues at the time have some reporting about how the Iranians have effectively been using a strategy here to drain the U.S. down from its Patriot interceptors that we know we've been running low on. Do you think, does the reporting suggest that that is why Trump has essentially sort of changed course here from these threats and escalation to this sort of slower moving economic pressure for the time being?
Well, we are running out of ammunition. That all the reporting shows that, and even we have reporting that even Trump has talked to Pete Hegseth about it. That he, I guess Hegseth didn't fully inform him about how low the munitions were getting, and that's a concern because it takes 2-3 years to make some of these materials, and if the United States is bombarding Iran all the time and we're losing our defense systems, that's a problem, right? Of course. Now Trump is saying that he's low-keying the war in Iran. He's de-emphasizing it. He's saying he doesn't care as much about it. And I think he has to say things like that when he can't figure a way out of a situation. You'll see that sometimes with lawsuits and different policies he embraces. He will give up on them or try to downplay their significance. And so I think that he's in a situation here with the war in Iran where he can't get out of it. It's deeply unpopular. People don't like it. It's potentially going to hurt him at the midterms. And so he has to sort of distance himself psychologically from it to try to save face.
Laura, what's your sense from your sources around the president, around this White House, of his thinking? Our colleague Jonathan Lemire has a great piece in The Atlantic this morning, casting doubt on the president's ability to, I guess, keep this low-keying it sort of strategy of patience going.